sekalian.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow us to introduce ourselves. My name is Jeremiah.
And my name is Rekian. Together we have the honor of guiding you through this morning opening ceremony.
Bangga sekali tentunya kami dapat memandu rangkaian opening ISJAI ke-9 ini. This year, our symposium proudly carries the theme, Futures in Multipolarising World, Global South Perspective.
We would also like to extend our sincere gratitude to our sponsor, Danone and Asuransi Jasindo or Jasa Indonesia, whose generous support has made this symposium possible. With that, we are honored to begin this morning's program. To mark the official opening of the event, we would like to invite the chair of the organizing committee, Mr. Arif Wicaksono, to the stage to present the organizing committee report.
Mr. Arif, please join us on the stage. Please give a round of applause to Mr. Arif Wicaksono.
Respected Professor Evi Fitriani, PhD, Dean of the Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Indonesia, together with the members of the faculty, Dr. Phil Imam Ardianto, Chair of Department of Anthropology, Dr. Irwan Hidayana, Editor-in-Chief of Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia, our distinguished keynote speakers, Professor Amita Baviskar, Professor Lee Xiaoyun, Elstineke Rike Katmo, PhD, and Gideon Lasko, PhD. Distinguished steering committee, panel conveners, presenters, and participants. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Welcome to the one and only International Symposium of Indonesian Anthropology in Indonesia. As the home of Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia, our department is truly honored to host the 9th International Symposium of Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia. Since its inception in 2000, the first symposium has been held in Makassar, and then Padang, Denpasar, Depok, Banjarmasin, Depok, Yogyakarta, Manado, and this year, we are delighted to welcome you back in Depok. We have been greatly encouraged by the enthusiasm shown by scholars and practitioners in response to this symposium. First, during the call for submission, we received more than 400 paper abstracts and over 30 non-paper submissions. Second, after a careful review process conducted by our panel conveners, approximately 250 paper presentation, 6 book sessions, 19 films, and 10 non-paper works were selected for this symposium. Congratulations. Third, this year's symposium offers more than paper presentation. Our program also includes book discussion, film screenings, and multimodal exhibition. Approximately 350 scholars from around 19 countries are participating in this symposium. Ladies and gentlemen, throughout the preparation of this symposium, we have done our best to respond to every email and inquiries from all of you. We sincerely apologize if there were one or two matters that we may have overlooked. I would also like to express our sincere gratitude to Jasindo and Danone for their generous support for this symposium. Last but not least, I would like to thank all of our friends, all of our students, volunteers, and colleagues whose dedication and hard work have made this event possible. We sincerely hope that the symposium will run smoothly and successfully. May we have very productive discussion, may we have inspired meaningful collaboration and foster new academic friendship. Pulau Irian, burung cendrawasih.
Cakep.
Cukup sekian dan terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Arif Wicaksono, for the report. Like what Mr. Arif have already stated, it is such an honor for us all to welcome all of the amazing selected scholars into our campus for this International Symposium of Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia. Next, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to invite the Chair Department of Anthropology, Dr. Phil Imam Ardianto. Dr. Imam, please join us into the stage. Let's give a round of applause for Dr. Imam.
Good morning, everyone. Honorable Dean of the Faculty of Social and Political Science, Prof. F.E. Fitriani, and our distinguished keynote speakers, esteemed members of the steering committee, panel convener, dear colleague, participants, students, and friends who travel from near and far. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kewajiban, and very good morning to you all. It is my honor on behalf of the Department of Anthropology, Universitas Indonesia, to welcome you to the 9th International Symposium of Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia. To those who have crossed ocean and time zones to be here in Depok, and to those who have come from across the archipelago, selamat datang. A symposium such as this draws meaning from the people gathered within it, and we are genuinely glad that you are among us this morning. Before I turn to briefly talk about today's event and the coming days, please allow me to give you a words about where we stand, and where we stand is in a longer story. This symposium doesn't begin from nothing. It rests upon Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia, a journal whose lineage reaches back to 1969, first as Berita Antropologi, and from the 20th Jubilee in 1989, under the name it carries today, Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia. That is more than half a century of Indonesian anthropology, thinking aloud on that page, shaped by figures such as Kunchara Ningrat, Parsudi Suparlan, Harsa Bahtiar, James Dananjaya, Niko Kalangi, and most of our teachers as well, Ibu Mutia Hatta, Ibu Yunita Winarto, who is here now, Ahmad Fediani, and late Pa Iwan Citrajaya, and of course many other professors whose labor laid the foundations on which we still build. The symposium itself was born a quarter century ago. The first international symposium was convened in Makassar in August 2000, and is as an Indonesian anthropologist response to a nation entering a new political era after the Reformation, asking about how regional autonomy, how the local cultural political movement and national integrations might be held together. In the years since, this symposium has grown into the largest and most recognized gathering of anthropology in Indonesia, traveling deliberately beyond Depok campuses across the archipelago in order to share its knowledge more widely. We meet today as the need in that line. To stand here in this succession is about an honor and responsibility, and it is worth remembering that from the very beginning, this symposium was conceived as a way of thinking through the moments of profound change. That is precisely what is called to do again today and the coming days. And I want to say directly here why this year's symposium feels different even against that long history. Each symposium bears the imprint of its moment. And the moment in which we now meet is not one in which we last convened in Manado. The world has grown a bit darker and harder in this interval and period. The COVID-19 effect and the decline of the comfortable assumption of a single stable global order, one center, one settled path of progress, has given way to a multipolarizing world that is more contested, more volatile, and more perilous. We meet amid accelerating environmental destruction, a planetary emergency of climate extraction and ecological loss, whose costs fall first and most heavily on the communities of the global south. We meet amid deepening inequality within nations and between them, as security and prosperity concentrate while precarity spreads. We meet as resurgent authoritarian and fascist current gain ground in many parts of the world and political landscape, sustained by exclusion, militarism, and deliberate making of enemies and others. We meet disruptive technology, artificial intelligence, pervasive surveillance from the state and the private sector, and the platform economy that remake labor, knowledge, and human intimacy is moving faster than our ethic or our institution can follow. And we meet in a time of open economic warfare and armed conflict today, when sanction, blockade, and weaponizations of commerce sits alongside outright bombardment of civil persons. As the recent violence surrounding Iran and the wider Middle East remind us with consequences that ripple through energy displacement and the everyday life of ordinary people far from any battlefield. I think these are not distant abstractions, they are lived in contested livelihood and land struggle, in displacement and grief, in the anxious calculations by youth family and communities across archipelago await their future. To hold our teams, Pluriversal future in multipolarizing worlds, against so severe a backdrop is not to retreat into only a theory. It is to insist that even here, especially here, anthropology has work to do. It is worth recalling where this gathering comes from. Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia was found to develop and enrich scholarly discussions on the socio-cultural life in Indonesia. And for decades, it has done exactly that through peer review, ethnographically grounded work attentive to theory methods and the ethical dilemmas of anthropologists face in the field. This symposium is that same commitment, made collective and public. It is a continuous with the work of our department as well that speak directly to the crisis I have named before. The questions on our program are the questions our scholars live with every day. Over these 4 days, our keynote speaker will set the intellectual horizons to you. I leave the pleasure of the introduction to the session themselves. And some 35 panel will carry us across a remarkable range of world. We will sit with the life in extraction zone, the everyday struggle at the frontiers of resource state, with the contestation of extractivism, environmental justice, with the regime of war, in multi-species entanglement, with the politics of life, in renewable frontiers and energy transition, and of course, other topics that will coming. Notice too that how we will share knowledge here, because the forms matter as much as the content. Alongside conventional paper, the symposium make room for roundtable, multimodal, and film-based presentation, and non-paper contributions in the forms of book, exhibition, and films. This plurality of form is itself pluriversal commitment, a recognition that anthropological knowledge travels not only through academic texts, but through image, artistic practice, and public scholarship. I hope you will wander beyond the sessions most familiar to you and let yourself be surprised in many forms. Finally, I want to name, and most importantly, I want to name where the real labor lies in this symposium. Behind every session, every room, every schedule, name tag, stands, or organizing committee, and great share of this work has been carried out by early career, junior scholars, research assistant, and student from our department. The young colleague, the graduate students, they are the ones who have answered countless emails, chased logistic, and held everything together with patience and good humor. This symposium is yours as well, as much as anyone. You have shouldered the least visible and the most demanding work, and you have done it with grace. On behalf of the department, thank you, Arif and the team, and please know that the future Indonesia anthropology is now in very capable hand with all of you as the next generations. To our keynote speaker, thank you for coming here. The editor of Jurnal Antropologi, thank you also for the stewardship of this symposium. May these 4 days be generous in sight, rigorous in inquiry, and full of the unexpected, and may we leave on the 7th of August with more questions, more courage, and more comradeship that we arrive with. Thank you, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi.
Thank you, Dr. Imam, for those warm words of welcome.
Of course, it is exciting to wonder the intellectual horizons throughout these 4 days, like what Dr. Imam has already said.
It is now our great honor to invite the Dean of the Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Indonesia, Professor Dr. Evi Fitriani, PhD, to deliver the opening speech and to officially declare the NEET ISJAI Symposium open.
Let's give a round of applause to Professor Evi.
Even in Indonesia, usually start with a lot of speech, but I promise you it will be very, very short. Thank you very much for your patience, and thank you very much for nice music. Somebody told me that I can order the song, so maybe I'll order Genderang UI when I step down. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi and good morning for all of you. Distinguished speakers, especially our keynote speakers, Professor Anita Baviskar, Professor Lee Xiaoyun, Ibu Els Tineke, and Mr. Gideon Lasko, also our distinguished professors, especially Professor Yunita, and head of the Department of Anthropology, all respected scholars, researchers, practitioners, students, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to the 9th International Symposium of Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia, held here at the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Universitas Indonesia in Depok. On behalf of the faculty, I would like to extend my warmest appreciation to everyone who has traveled far and near to participate in this important academic gathering. And we especially honor to welcome our keynote speakers, panel conveners, presenters, and participants whose expertise and diverse experiences enrich this symposium. As you already note from the previous speakers, this symposium has served as a significant platform for intellectual exchange among anthropologists and scholars from various disciplines for more than 2 decades, and who have the initiator and the pioneer of this conference, Professor Yunita, is here with us together this morning. Beyond presenting research findings, this symposium has fostered meaningful collaboration across university, research institutions, civil society organizations, and communities, not only in Southeast Indonesia and Southeast Asia, but also around the world. So we are proud that this tradition continues to grow, strengthening Indonesia's role as an active contributor to global anthropological scholarship. And from Dr. Imam's speech just now, we also heard that it is the young scholars and students who organize this conference. So it's really touched because they will be the future of our academic community. The theme of this year's symposium is particularly timely and very important. When I saw the first time the theme, I saw it twice. Why? Is there any, the conference team here? Somebody can put it. Pluriversal future in a multipolarizing world. Global South perspective. I was a bit surprised and happy when I read this theme. As a scholar of international relations, I'm very familiar with the constructivism. I myself use it for my own work. And because we borrow a lot of knowledge and concept from anthropology and sociology. So when reading this theme, I'm pleased that colleagues from anthropology also work on the deconstruction of knowledge about our world. I think it is not about diminishing segmentation of our knowledge, but also something bigger. It scrutinizes the relation between power and knowledge. For many centuries, dominating power, usually we call it the West, has determined the way we perceive and study about ourselves and our world. With the emerging powers from so-called Global South, we start to deconstruct our knowledge and understanding of our world, and we question the universalization of world that we used to learn. I'm part of these people who first learned about universal, but now I don't believe in universal anymore. When saw this theme, there are three words struck me. Two are very familiar: polarizing world and global south. I used to work with this kind of concept, but pluriversal is new for me. I didn't use that word, but I have to check the AI, what does it mean, and I agree with that. I think this is a very, very good theme, and timely and important. So I'm very pleased that the International Symposium of Jurnal Antropologi enhanced in this endeavor and invited not only anthropologists, but also scholars from other disciplines to participate in the developing our future knowledge in this direction. So, and by involving a wide range of perspectives from Global South, we can expect much richer knowledge and science in the future. 250 scholars from 19 countries, 250 papers presented by 400 scholars from 19 countries. It is a very rich academic forum. I am also very proud that Department of Anthropology of FISIP UI is taking the lead in this effort. For you, maybe didn't know, anthropology is one of 4 disciplines at this university that now rank in the top 100, in the world top 100. So give applause to this anthropology colleagues and department. We hope it is not only about rank and new knowledge, but also about friendship, networking, that you can take advantage of these rich resources of people around you for these couple days. We hope this international symposium not only strengthen the discipline world's position, enhancing the pluriversality, I have to find the nouns of this, enhance the pluriversality of knowledge, but also enlightens participants, and more importantly, contribute to the society and our better world. With these many hopes, may I officially open the 9th International Symposium of Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia.
Amazing. Yes, once again, we may ring the bell to symbolically open this event. Once again, Professor Effie.
Okay, may I repeat again then?
Yes.
With these many hopes, may I officially open the 9th International Symposium of Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia.
Let's give a round of applause for the opening ceremony that have been officially opened by Professor Effie. Once again, thank you so much, Prof. Yes,
Finished.
of course.
Hang on, I haven't finished. I just opened it. I haven't closed my speech yet. Hang on. One more minute. May I thank all the colleagues, especially staff and students involved in the organizer for their hard work in preparing and running this conference. I also thank all the participants for your contribution to our future knowledge. I hope you can take advantage of being at UI to enjoy our green campus and surrounding areas, in addition to the networking across universities and countries. I wish you a great symposium and an enjoyable discussion in these 2 days. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good day.
Round of applause for Professor Effie. Thank you so much once again.
Once again, thank you very much, Professor Effie, for your inspiring opening speech.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we sincerely hope that over the next 4 days, the symposium will run smoothly and successfully.
Yes, Jeremiah, ISJAI hopefully provide meaningful discussion, valuable collaboration, and inspiring ideas for everyone involved. But before we continue, we would now like to invite our university leaders, distinguished keynote speakers, organizing committee, and all participants to join us for a group photograph.
We kindly ask everyone to stand and face the stage, as our photographer will be taking the photo from the front of the stage. And please look toward the camera. We'll also be joining the photo. Okay. All the audiences, of course, we also like to invite to stand, because the photographer will be taking our photo from the stage. Okay, we would like to also invite everyone on the left and the right side of the seatings to merge into the center. Let's merge into the center so that it will be more gathered in the photo. Look closer and engage to each other. Once again, thank you so much. Let's gather and merge into the center of the seatings of this auditorium. Okay. Let's focus on the center camera. Okay. Hand sign with you, or like 2 on the right hand and 1 on the left hand. It stands for UI.
Don't forget to give your best smile.
Smile, of course. UI. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. You may now back to your seats. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope the photograph session that we just did will serve as a lasting reminder of the meaningful connections and memorable moments shared at the 9th ISJAI Symposium.
Now, with the official opening ceremony behind us, we are excited to begin the heart of today's program. We will now move into our first keynote session, where we will hear valuable insights from our distinguished speakers.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow us to introduce this morning's moderator, Dr. Mia Siskawati. She is a faculty member of the graduate program in Gender Studies at Universitas Indonesia and also teaches at the Department of Anthropology. She earned her bachelor's degree from the Faculty of Forestry at IPB University, a master's degree in Gender and Development from Brande University, and both a master's degree and a PhD in Anthropology from the University of Washington.
She is also the founder of Rimbawan Muda Indonesia. Her research and advocacy focus on gender, environment, and development, and her contribution have been recognized through prestigious honors, including the Asoka Fellowship, the Fulbright Scholarship, and the Kartini Award.
It is now our greatest pleasure to invite Dr. Mia Siskawati to the stage to moderate our first keynote session. Let's give a round of applause for Dr. Mia.
Saya panggil dulu. Oke. Selamat pagi, good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Tanjidor really touched my heart as anak Kemayoran. Okay. Before I start, I'd like to invite the keynote speaker, the first keynote speaker to be with me, Professor Amita Bhaviskar. So, good morning, colleagues, guests, as distinguished participants. Welcome to this plenary session of the 9th International Symposium of Jurnal Antropologi Indonesia. It is my pleasure to serve as the chair for this session. Our symposium explores the pluriversal futures in a multipolarizing world, Global South perspectives. This morning, I will be hosting two keynote speakers, and the keynotes offer an important opportunity to deepen our discussion on this theme from the perspective of today's distinguished speakers. Allow me to introduce the first keynote speakers, Professor Amita Bhaviskar. Professor Amita Bhaviskar is one of India's leading social scientists and a distinguished scholar in environmental studies, political ecology, and development studies. She is Professor of Environmental Studies and Sociology and Anthropology at Ashoka University, India. Her research explores the intersections of environment, development, social inequality, and justice in contemporary India. Professor Bhaviskar is the author of several influential books, including In the Belly of the River, Waterscapes, Contested Grounds, and Uncivil City. Her outstanding contribution to environmental sociology were recognized with the Infosys Prize in Sociology. Let us welcome Professor Amita Bhaviskar with applause. Okay. So, this morning, Professor Amita Bhaviskar will be delivering keynote speech about the decolonizing the university, a view from India. So please join me in warmly welcoming the keynote speech from Professor Bhaviskar. The time is yours now. And I think the organizing committee already shared with you that you have, according to schedule, you have like around 30 to 35 minutes of presentation. Then the audience will have around 15 to 20 minutes of questions. Okay, I'll let you know 5 minutes before the time. You could use the podium.
Good morning to everyone here. It is my honor and my privilege to speak to you today, and I thank all the organizers for inviting me to Jakarta. This is my very first time in Indonesia, and I think nothing sums up my sense of excitement as much as this wonderful band that greeted us and gave us this cheerful, energizing, rousing welcome. It's always strange to be in a place where you don't speak the language. Yet, in many ways, I don't feel that Indonesia is strange to me, because I did my PhD in the US at Cornell University, and that opened the door to the work of Nancy Peluso, Tanya Lee, and Anna Singh, and many others. So how I think of forests and the struggles of indigenous people, how I think about the discourse of development and aspirations for improvement, or how I think about small farmers embedded in global commodity markets, has been indelibly shaped by this second-hand encounter with Indonesia. And in many ways, this is the irony, isn't it? That our desire to protect and create pluriverses that nurture diverse forms of relating to each other, humans and the more than human world, while rooted in a shared sense of justice, is only too often mediated by imperial networks, such as elite universities or funding agencies in the global north. Perhaps I should look back to a less complicated moment, the 1955 Asian-African Conference in Bandung, here in Java, jointly organized by Indonesia and India, that launched the non-aligned movement, an endeavor by newly independent nation states to resist incorporation into the binaries of the Cold War. And though we've come a long way from the certitudes of that bipolar world, the question of decolonization stays with us as unfinished business. And that sets the stage for my talk today on decolonizing a discipline that is anthropology, and decolonizing the university that is the place where many of us work and learn and hope to strengthen. As the most populous country in the world to have been directly ruled by European power for more than 200 years, India bears the deep and distinct imprint of colonialism. Colonial power and its forms of knowledge drew upon, disrupted, and reconstituted older ideologies of caste, purity and pollution, religious difference, and gender inequality. Independence in 1947, birthed in the horrific violence of partition that created Pakistan and India as separate countries, was meant to be a break from this past, launching a vigorous phase of modern development where the nation would rapidly stride towards economic and social progress. State institutions would promote industrialization and enlightenment values. The spanner-wielding citizen patriot in blue overalls would eat his lunch alongside fellow workers from other castes and faiths. State investment in higher education would create a liberal, scientifically minded elite that would guide the nation to greatness. What role would the university and specifically the discipline of anthropology play in this plan for a post-colonial nation. So in my talk, I'm going to provide a perspective on the challenges and dilemmas faced by anthropology in India as a form of knowledge embedded in institutional practices in the academy, but shaped by a larger political field of nation building. After discussing the place of anthropology within a disciplinary hierarchy, I will analyze the changing terms of its engagement with power knowledge in public scholarship. I'm going to end by examining how the institutional base of the discipline is being transformed by the combined effects of neoliberal policies and Hindu nationalist ideologies. I shall comment on what these changes imply for decolonizing anthropology in terms of its practitioners, practices, and the knowledge that they create. My talk draws on personal observations over 40 years of studying and working in public and private institutions in Delhi. I don't attempt to survey a field where diverse theoretical paradigms, institutions, and associations, as well as personalities, have flourished for more than 100 years. That would be impossible. Nor do I claim to speak on behalf of scholars in non-metropolitan Indian settings, or venture to speak about the study of India from abroad. So instead of magisterial pronouncements about anthropology with a capital A in India, I offer you an idiosyncratic account which tries to capture its high and low points, as well as the spirit and mood of these moments. I should begin with an important caveat, and this is a question that I've been asked several times already in the day that I've been here. The thing is that most anthropologists in India call themselves sociologists, not anthropologists. Most research that uses concepts and methods that anthropologists abroad would find familiar actually takes place in sociology departments in Indian universities. Leading post-independence scholars who founded or revived key university departments, such as M.N. Srinivas, who started the sociology department in Delhi, where I studied, and G.S. Ghurye in Bombay University, they refuse to distinguish between the two disciplines of sociology and anthropology, since they saw the divide between the study of so-called primitive and agrarian cultures on the one hand, and industrial societies on the other, as untenable in the context of modernizing India. So, for example, the top Indian journal, like the anthropological one that is sponsoring this conference, the top Indian journal that publishes ethnographic work is called Contributions to Indian Sociology. Most sociologists use anthropological methods, especially ethnography, rather than surveys or other quantitative techniques. And this is, I think, also increasingly true of a subsection of North American and European sociologists. So I'm going to refer to our tribe of scholars as sociologists, anthropologists. When I was growing up, in my extended family, in true Indian middle-class fashion, success and respect lay in being a doctor or an engineer. These professions were useful and they made money. Sociology, anthropology, any social science with the exception of economics seemed vague and self-indulgent. But what use is it? My engineer and banker cousins would ask when I tried to explain what I did. Later, when I seemed to be successful by their metric, traveling abroad at the invitation of prestigious universities like this one, they grew to have a grudging respect. They still didn't understand what I did, But clearly, I was good at whatever scam I was pulling off. For 15 years, I worked in the sociology unit at the Institute of Economic Growth, a reputed government-funded research institute in Delhi established in 1952. Most of my colleagues were economists and demographers. 70 years after its founding, the name Institute of Economic Growth still accurately captures the reigning ethos of the place. We were supposed to be scholars who contributed to the growth of the economy. And the growth of the economy was always equated with the growth of welfare. We were proud of our colleagues who served on the Planning Commission and other high-powered government committees. They were experts. They advised government ministries on policy. In contrast, sociologists, anthropologists dealt with culture, which my colleagues, economists and demographers, sort of dismissed as, the sort of extra, the frilly bits. What we had to say about the social construction of politics and the state, about markets, was to them peculiar and puzzling. Most of all, it seemed beside the point. Even when we addressed what they recognized as policy issues, migration, urban housing, food and nutrition, we didn't seem to do it in useful ways. We were regarded as self-indulgent lightweights, lost in our colorful, complicated world. Our seminars, they would say, it was all very interesting, but then their voices would trail off. Nothing in what we had to say dented the economists' view of the world, the truths that they regarded as self-evident. This was equally true in my previous workplace, the Department of Sociology at Delhi University, which is housed within a compound called the Delhi School of Economics. However, there were also non-intellectual aspects to these encounters, and that hierarchy where economists were always dominant compared to sociologists and anthropologists. As an aside, I should mention that when economists with their very macho, math-based, macro problem-solving image encountered soft and fuzzy sociologists, anthropologists in the coffee house and in the library, the frisson frequently resulted in romance and marriage. So I can count a large number of couples, economist, husband, and sociologist, anthropologist, wives, which have resulted from this. In some ways, kinship relations continuing to reflect the disciplinary hierarchy. And of course, these female sociologists, anthropologists marrying male economists fulfills the pattern of hypergamous unions that satisfy patriarchal norms. But anyway, back to business. The same polite disdain for sociologists, anthropology, and discomfort with the knowledge it produced surfaced when I worked with computer scientists on a project to understand the effects of air pollution on adolescents with asthma in Delhi. You probably know that Delhi is the most polluted. Air pollution in Delhi is the worst in terms of all capitals around the world. So these scientists were monitoring air pollution levels and respiratory rates in real time. And as anthropologists, we were interviewing adolescents and their families on the experience of living with asthma. Everything went well until we came to a 10-year-old girl, the only child of working-class Muslim parents, whose asthma attacks were related not so much to air quality as to her parents' quarrels. Her episodes of wheezing and labored breathing were part of a dynamic where her emotional distress took physical form. Her environment was attacking her, and her body responded. Perhaps it was also gratifying for her when her parents rushed to her side and she was able to stop them from fighting. This connection between physical illness, mental and emotional states, and social relations was an unexpected twist to the story we'd started with. But to our collaborators, it was clear that this was not a line of inquiry that we should follow. Doing so would dilute the message our research was meant to highlight, that air pollution causes asthma. As we debated this issue, it became apparent that our scientific collaborators saw the role of anthropologists as providing local color to a script that had already been written. Policy advocacy demanded clear diagnoses and prescriptions. It had no place for complex, confounding findings. These misunderstandings, the collaborations that collapse, the occasions where we talk past each other or don't even seem to speak the same language, are commonplace. What do others expect of anthropologists, and what do we expect of ourselves? How are these expectations met, repudiated, and negotiated? In India, the ever-present context for these encounters is the condition of post-coloniality. The need to prove oneself as equal or superior to the colonizer that Partha Chatterjee, the political scientist, wrote about, is intimately tied to two connected imperatives. One, to create knowledge that commands universal acclaim, international acclaim, and the other, to serve the nation. However, while winning the Nobel Prize or the Fields Medal or attracting other forms of international recognition has always been valued as an intrinsic good that glorifies the nation, it is not a goal that most of us can hope to achieve. Thus, it is the second aim of scholarship as problem solving that has predominated. Successive state-appointed commissions on higher education have noted that a country with scarce resources and pressing problems requires socially responsible citizens. Academics cannot inhabit ivory towers. Respect and rewards follow for those who generate and disseminate knowledge that is directly useful for economic growth and social welfare. This instrumental view of knowledge dominates over the concept of liberal education as an end in itself, based on values that viewed higher education as the cultural cultivation of the self, combined with the quest of truth in the sciences and the sublime in the arts. As practitioners of a so-called soft discipline, Indian sociologists, anthropologists have a hard time competing for status against the more muscular sciences that do the heavy lifting of technological and economic issues. Nonetheless, we feel obliged to respond to the implicit demand that the work we do address real-world problems that influence public policy. My colleague Nandini Sundar has written an insightful essay on being a scholar and a citizen. She points out, and I quote, "Since the early 20th century and the beginnings of professional sociology, anthropology in India, scholars have debated between nationalism, policy relevance, and basic research, between science in English and humanist expression in the vernacular, between the desire to be current with Western theory and publish in international journals, and the desire to be independent from academic colonialism, where the standards of what is important and relevant are derived from Western academic traditions and national contexts. Different paths stem from a clearing in which colonialism and its other contended to create a particular society and its self-understanding. Which one do we choose? Unlike, say, in the North American Academy, most anthropologists in India have chosen to be public intellectuals, addressing the urgent questions of the day. Should caste, or class be the basis for affirmative action policies? Should scheduled tribes, or so-called indigenous people, be recognized by that label of indigeneity or not? Should women's rights to property be governed by religion-based personal laws or by a uniform civil code? Public engagement in the form of writing for the press, speaking at citizens' forums, giving interviews to journalists assumes that one's authority to intervene derives from expert knowledge. As part of a tiny English-educated intelligentsia in a developmental state, anthropologists have never been shy about offering their opinions, even considering it their duty to do so. Yet these considered views have become increasingly ineffectual in winning a wider audience or influencing state policy. Why? Perhaps the answer lies in how anthropology's proximity to centers of power has shifted over time. Under colonialism, anthropologists were integral to the project of rule, enumerating and fixing the fluidity of Indian society into rigid categories of caste, tribe, village, and religion. Anthropologist administrators produce classificatory schema that started as technologies of government, but became consolidated into collective identities that now have become internalized in political and social life. This was the acme of anthropology's influence on the subcontinent, its closest alignment with bureaucratic power. And in the years leading up to independence, one could discern another strain of anthropology in the work of Verrier Elwin and Christoph von Führer-Hemendorf, whose meticulous ethnographies of different tribes in central and northeastern India made a case for their protection by the state. Elwin worked closely with India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru to draft a policy for granting autonomy to communities in the Northeast Frontier Agency, now called Arunachal Pradesh. However, after independence, Elwin and his ideas for autonomy and decentralization were left by the wayside as the state launched its drive towards industrial development, a goal that entailed displacing and dispossessing millions of Adivasis, as we call scheduled tribes, to extract minerals and expand agricultural land, and to build large dams. State policies that prioritize resource exploitation over the rights of Adivasis pose a dilemma for an agency like the Anthropological Survey of India, a colonial-era government service that continues to this day. While the Anthropological Survey of India has moved to more politically correct terminology, so what were once called primitive tribal groups are now called, well, since the 1990s, particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Their practices are still deeply paternalistic. These pictures are from the Niyamgiri Hills in eastern India, where I went as part of a government commission to examine the forest rights of a community called the Dongria Kond, threatened by displacement due to proposed bauxite mining by the transnational corporation Vedanta. Here, the ASI officer considered the local inhabitants to be wards of the state. He said, "They're very simple people, you know." And yet, the benevolent care of the ASI was accompanied by a studied silence when it came to state policies that destroyed the very condition of being Dongria Kond. The ASI never speaks out against land alienation, forest takeover, or mining. These are considered by them to be political issues, not for government employees to take a stand on. In private, the official shook his head mournfully and said, yes, this is their homeland, but India needs to develop. That so-called simple people would be crushed under the industrial juggernaut was sad but inevitable. Before they vanished, the ASI would document their customs, their rituals, and their music. A more sanguine view prevailed in the literature on mainstream caste-based communities, where the first 3 decades of the post-colonial period were marked by limited land reforms, state investment in the Green Revolution's technology, and in some regions, growing educational and employment opportunities in towns and cities. The most popular form of research was called village studies, and this was exemplified in M. N. Srinivas's classic, The Remembered Village. And the dominant refrain of sociology and anthropology to be found in the subtitles of hundreds of books published in those decades was continuity and change. India was modernizing, and these studies spoke to those unsettled by or impatient with the pace of transformation. The focus on the village as a unit of analysis, also influenced by the import, along with Green Revolution technology, of American rural sociology. Through academic exchanges with land-grant universities in the US and funds from US organizations, Indian anthropologists were encouraged to undertake the Indian equivalent of community studies. Most scholarship emphasized that the great tradition lived on in little communities. At the same time, the caste system was not unique to India. As Louis Dumont asserted in Homo Hierarchicus, but could be usefully understood in terms of the trajectory of class. Oops, I seem to have skipped a few slides. M. N. Srinivas countered the colonial notion of the rigidity of the caste system by coining the term Sanskritization to describe how middle-ranking castes sought upward mobility by adopting Brahminical ideologies and customary practices such as vegetarianism. And he also introduced the term Westernization to describe the changes brought about by colonial rule. Indian or Hindu exceptionalism, the resilience of its religiously sanctioned social institutions like caste, their ability to absorb secular change and also seep into new arenas of electoral politics and urban industrial employment, these were the preoccupations that reflected the tradition versus modernity dichotomy that informed the project of nation building. India went through a period of emergency in 1975-77, where the government of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi suspended civil liberties, censored the media, and imprisoned political opponents, leading to a growing disillusionment with the state and a new focus on the continuities between colonial and post-colonial agendas and actions. The influence of the subaltern school of historians and its call to read history against the grain of the colonial archive to delineate the subjective consciousness in forming moments of resistance also permeated anthropology. State-sponsored violence against the Sikh community following Indira Gandhi's assassination in 1984 prompted further questioning of the social contract, wherein scholars had assumed that the state acted in good faith. Domination and resistance became the chief objects of analysis in this period of the 1980s, when, not coincidentally, collective mobilization by women, by Dalits or scheduled castes, formerly untouchable castes, Adivasis or indigenous people, and peasants became stronger. Feminist and Marxist analysis began to emerge. From social movements to the subtle interrogation of dominant structures, weapons of the weak, so to speak, studies emphasized how state actions were questioned and undermined. suspicion about how secularization eroded the integrity of cultural communities, and skepticism about the standardizing effects of liberal ideologies predominated. So there was a celebration of pluriverses. And these challenged the founding values of the post-colonial nation state and its tryst with modernity. In this period of the 1980s, two styles of critique prevailed. One was the idea of the anthropologist as activist, championing social justice by speaking on behalf of the voiceless and the oppressed. Sociologists wrote about small farmers, sex workers, religious minorities, and other subalterns with sympathy and attention, but they rarely reflected on how the research process reproduced upper class and upper caste privilege. Fieldwork required a period of slumming, its hardships and humiliation a rite of passage that secured academic credentials and careers, security and respect. This trajectory allowed one to maintain a progressive self-image and a comfortable lifestyle, one's conscience mostly untroubled by one's distance from the lives of one's subjects. The other far less prominent but more prestigious style of critique was the anthropologist who disdained earnest debates about class struggle or the women's question, but instead drew on French and American literary and cultural theory to interrogate social categories in a meta-challenge to the concerns that had thus far animated the discipline. Semiotic analyses, reading society as a text, the cultural turn among Indian anthropologists led to dense cerebration and staggeringly abstruse writing. As a book reviewer, herself a respected and very readable scholar caustically remarked about a monograph on weavers in a North Indian small town. This study seemed to be in direct conversation with the hottest French philosophers, but it had nothing to say about the nitty-gritty of social relations, materials, and markets that must make up the everyday life world of weavers. Paradoxically, an emic account of the group, the specific cultural meanings they invested in their work, was validated only when it was refracted through universal, Eurocentric concepts and theories. Unlike the first set of critics who used their research projects as a touchstone for their own authenticity, this second set of scholars displayed their mastery over post-colonial theory as their mark of distinction. These differences notwithstanding, both sets of critical thinkers brought about a sea change in how anthropologists saw themselves. Our expectations of ourselves, of our discipline in the world, were transformed. No longer were we just poor cousins to economists. We were people who spoke truth to power. To be sure, power wasn't exactly listening, but what of that? Our work challenged the status quo, the common sense of our times. It was counter-hegemonic. Yes, we were still marginal. We ranked lowest in the social science pecking order where economists still ruled, but we wore our low status as a badge of honor. Because in our hearts, we knew we were intellectually superior, infinitely more sophisticated than those positivist builders of mechanical models. We looked down on them, we deconstructed, and we sneered. We were critics at large and proud of our attitude. This attitude, which let us roam around the world invisibly cloaked in our secret powers, has served us well. It has been great for morale. We continue to not be asked to the parties of the movers and the shakers, but we are confident in our certainty that if we were asked, we would definitely refuse the invitation. Now, we could have continued coasting along in this somewhat insular fantasy life, but in the 1990s, economic liberalization eventually reached the academy. The social sciences were an established presence in public universities, and at first were allowed to carry on with business as usual. Political interference was limited, since higher education was crucial for containing a youthful population with the promise of employment and upward mobility. Affirmative action policies offered a semblance of social justice, so the university was something more than just an arena for the reproduction of inequality. But just as university enrollment was at an all-time high and included a larger than ever share of women, Dalits, and other backward classes, the neoliberal discourse of fiscal prudence and market worthiness entered higher education. Public universities ceded space to private institutions. Over the last 20 years, the share of private universities in total enrollments has risen from 50% to 80%. Most of these only offer professional courses like engineering, medicine, and commerce, and have no place for the social sciences or humanities. Public universities, on the other hand, have seen their budgets shrink. Permanent faculty positions are filled with temporary teachers, and they're hired for the semester at low wages. This academic precariat can only deliver the prescribed syllabus. It is not free to innovate in the classroom or focus on research. Like all scholarship, anthropology is a vocation. It is also a craft that demands years of dedicated practice, the opportunity to learn and reflect, to try out new things, and most of all, to care about one's work and take pride in it. Is this a sign that we're running out of time? Okay.
Waktu. Oh, okay. But I think we have managed, I talked to the organizing committee, so you have 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, okay. Two of the most radical reimaginations of sociology, anthropology in India have come from scholars who use the security afforded by their permanent positions in public universities to collaborate on long-term research with students who paid subsidized fees. At the University of Pune, Sharmila Rege and her colleagues helped students collect oral histories and recipes of Dalit or scheduled caste food practices, publishing them in Hindi, in Marathi and English. For Dalit students as well as their upper caste peers, this was probably the first time that their textbook analysis of the caste system came alive, where ongoing practices of untouchability could be revealed and discussed, where the intimate stigma around eating and sharing polluted food could be confronted and called out. At the University of Goa, sociologist Alito Sequeira turned the curriculum on its head for his first-generation college students, getting them to record and write about their own social milieu and then turn to theory for thinking through their observations. A far cry from my compulsory master's level Theories 1 class on Durkheim, Marx, and Weber. Sequeira's long-term engagement took the form of a book in Konkani and in English. So also notable in both these instances is the simultaneous use of English and the vernacular language of the region. This is a significant departure from the colonial context in which university disciplines were instituted and in which they continue to function, where English is the language of learning and knowledge and everything else is secondary. But the conditions for such collaborations, where teachers and students together define what knowledge matters and devise their own way of braiding the strands of theory and practice together, now no longer exist for most anthropologists. Until the 1990s, university-level students of sociology tended to be upper class and upper caste women and somewhat lower status men. For elite women, a degree in sociology could secure a college teacher's job, respectability, even prestige, along with easy timings that allowed for supervising the domestic household. The men of this social stratum went into better paying, more masculine professions. For middle-class men, studying sociology was a way to prepare for the competitive civil service exams, a leg up into the world of assured government employment, the most sought-after career in India. And in the 2000s, new opportunities also opened in the flourishing media and NGO world for men and women. 20 years on, just as the social profile of students has become more diverse, all these sources of employment are shutting their doors. Growth without jobs has hit educated youth the hardest. However, the belief that higher qualifications help in getting good jobs means that youth stay longer in the academy, piling up PhDs on top of their MAs and MPhils in an increasingly vain attempt that the inflated credentials will give them that extra edge. Even departments of anthropology and sociology, teaching subjects widely regarded as low status, are crowded with applicants trying to gain the cultural capital of a university degree while waiting to enter the job market. The urge to get a degree without any great interest in the subject or in doing research makes for diligent students but dull anthropologists. And even when a student shows promise, overworked and underpaid teachers cannot spot the spark or nurse it into flame. The cost-cutting imperative has reduced the strength of permanent faculty in universities, but has also led to increasing pressure to raise money for research. While the physical and biological sciences with their capital-intensive labs and equipment have always measured professional success in terms of the ability to get competitive grants, this expectation has become common in the social sciences in India only since economic liberalization. Most of the classic village studies were carried out on a lecturer's salary. That leisurely pursuit of long-term research is now passé. Projects, the larger the better, preferably paid for in foreign exchange. These are the sign of a successful anthropologist. And since European funding agencies emphasize building research networks in the South, scholars in the better-known Indian universities are regularly invited to join the projects of European anthropologists. Since there are few Indian funding sources, we often do. However, while these international collaborations that bring funds to our universities and support our graduate students look good on our CVs, they do not allow us to set our own research agenda. The European or British initiators of the proposal first figure out what they want to do and then cast around for Indian or Chinese or Indonesian partners to meet the grant condition. We then try to smuggle and shoehorn in our own research interests. Yet many Indian anthropologists maintain two lists in their mind: projects we are doing and projects we would rather be doing. On my own list of projects I would rather be doing are long-term studies that would enable me to spend extended periods of time in central India, tracing generational changes in food and agriculture. The precise theoretical focus of this research would emerge from leisurely reflective engagement and not from a hurried survey of the scholarly literature. In the same region, I would like to explore the emergence of youth-led Dalit political activism that invite comparison with Adivasis, and this endeavor is unlikely to find favor with funding agencies who shy away from political topics. The current political economy of academic production is geared to safe, speedy projects with a turnaround time of 5 years, and with publications continually in the pipeline. So much has this work discipline been internalized that the year I don't report a substantial journal article or edited book, I feel I'm failing as an academic. And this is, of course, not a neurosis peculiar to Indian academia, but is intensified. But it is intensified by the distinctive cultural politics that we contend with in the subcontinent. Finally, I want to speak about Hindu nationalism, because since 2014, when the Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party came to power in national government, the social sciences have been under attack as never before. The BJP and its allies' hostility springs from complex sources where ideological opposition is mingled with class-based cultural resentment. The social sciences and public universities have been the bastion of left liberal politics. While tiny in number, their elite English-speaking faculty commanded outsized public attention and respect. Now accused of espousing Western values that corrupt youth and being anti-Hindu and anti-national, social scientists contend with a range of intimidatory tactics. Students and increasingly teachers' groups affiliated with the BJP act as enforcers, violently policing the curriculum to cull material they deem insulting to Hinduism. They protest against the presence of progressive scholars. They harass and physically intimidate women, non-Hindus, and any academics who criticize the government. Some academics who work on human rights issues have even been imprisoned for years on charges of terrorism, awaiting the start of their former trials. So just as the university became a more socially diverse public sphere, where ideas and issues could be introduced and debated, new identities and alliances forged, students are being told in a variety of ways that they should shut up and sit down. This is perhaps the most difficult moment then for Indian anthropologists to contend with. So, who then wants to be an anthropologist? Or rather, why would anybody want to be an anthropologist? Here we are, maligned in many ways. The English language proficiency we've worked so hard to acquire now being reviled as a sign of our caste, class, privilege, and deracination, flailing for purchase while the saffron tide of Hindu nationalism threatens to sweep us away. Here we are in the neoliberal academy trying to hold on to our standards of good scholarship and collegiality when the goalposts have shifted, colleagues come and go, and morale is not the best. And we don't have many friends outside the academy or even within it. The values that anthropology claims to uphold, curiosity, empathy, understanding across difference, listening and bearing witness, destabilizing the familiar, reminding us that there are other ways of imagining the world. These virtues of a critical humanism are more relevant than ever. But many of us are fatigued from the everyday battles of having to fight to defend our institutions and our place in the world. Yet the sustenance that we find, and I'm just going to speak about this very briefly, is from our students. Students who have been facing funding cuts, the lack of scholarships, a whole host of other problems, have constantly, in the last 6 months, fought to uphold civil rights, to uphold citizenship for all. They have demonstrated against the Citizenship Amendment Act. Women students have gone on strike for equal access to the library and non-vegetarian food in North Indian universities. Dalit student groups have fought against caste discrimination. Students have protested against the ban on wearing hijab in colleges in BJP-ruled states, and students have stood up for freedom of speech. And last month, we have witnessed the extraordinary sight of hundreds of thousands of students led by the cockroach Janata Party and left-affiliated students, protesting and succeeding in getting the education minister to resign, forcing the government to take responsibility for repeated mismanagement of competitive exams. This resistance is all the more courageous because confronting the establishment today is extremely costly. Physical assault, years in jail, a lifetime of legal harassment. So when students participate in political activities and bunk a class, they may be missing out on the formal curriculum, but they're reminding us that good scholarship rests on the wider flourishing of democratic thought, speech, and action. So I shall end here with this image of our students, most of them enrolled, I should say, in the social sciences and humanities, who follow the exhortation to educate, agitate, and organize. Because these students give me hope, they refresh my vision of the academy and the world, and they challenge me to do better. A critical part of decolonizing disciplinary hierarchies is to learn from those whom we are expected to teach or study. And I have learned so much from our students, and I shall end with that continued hope in the ways in which the academy is rejuvenated by all the young scholars and the work that they're doing within the university and outside. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bhaviskar. Thank you very much for such a stimulating and thought-provoking keynote. I know we are behind the schedule a little bit, but because we started the Professor Bhaviskar keynote a little bit late, so I have talked to the organizing committee that I'd like to suggest that we have just two very short responses. Yeah, only 10 minutes for discussion. So I'd like to invite comments, but very short comments from the audience. Please briefly introduce yourself and your institution before delivering your short comment. And remember the time. So now I'll invite like 2 comments from the audience. Yes, one, yes, sir, and then another one. Yeah, Ibu Soraya. Okay, so the time is yours. The organizing committee, can you help providing the mic?
Check. Thank you for the invigorating opening keynote. You started your keynote with saying that decolonization is an unfinished business, followed with the ways in which Western division of disciplines were not adapted in a straightforward manner in other parts of the world, saying that in the case of India, anthropologists have been practicing in the field of sociologists, and that pretty much sort of resonate with me. So my name is Tico, and I'm sociologist of health, gender, and migration. And I suppose my question or my comment from what you just presented to us is that how do you see the future of decoloniality in academia, in particular between the so-called global South countries? What do you think we should prioritize to address this unfinished business of decolonization? Thank you.
Thank you. For the next question, Mbak Soraya. So the organizing committee, could you please help providing the mic for Ibu Soraya?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think I'm quite moved from the experience from India about the freedom of speech in the academic. I think this is, we haven't heard a lot in Indonesia what actually the problems and the way your academic collaboration or academic movement trying to deal with these issues. To be honest, we heard a lot what happened in the United States, and actually in Indonesia, we are also in the process of, academic freedom. We discuss and we actually deal with this problem. In Indonesia, we actually now in the time where academic cannot be silenced, and we think that we have to create movement with intellectual outside the academic. Now, I would like to hear more from an India case and whether we can learn together about dealing with these issues. So that is my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the questions. Now I'd like to invite Professor Baviskar to give comments.
Thank you so much for those questions. Decolonization as unfinished business is how I posed it here. But the difficulty is that in India, we don't actually use the term decolonization when talking about these, the dominant structures of knowledge and power to which our institutions are embedded, our disciplines are embedded. And that's partly because the term has been appropriated by the Hindu right wing. So they say we must decolonize knowledge. But what they mean by that is do away with anything which is based on science. They talk about ancient Indian knowledge, as in ancient Indian spiritual leaders, and the properties, the sort of magical properties of the Indian cow, all sorts of things which are historically inaccurate, which cannot be scientifically tested, come into the door under the label of decolonization. And decolonization is also often a code word for getting rid of or marginalizing a particular elite section, which includes people employed in the universities who have historically been critical of the government. So we use the term decolonization when speaking outside, because that's a term that people are familiar with outside the Indian context. But I think one has to be very careful about what one is trying to decolonize, because for India, to decolonize is not only to throw off the burden of British forms of control and rule that have governed us, but also to deal with the caste system. And everything can't be blamed on the British. So that's been part of the problem. In trying to do so, when it comes to the question of how we organize, right now things are really tough. But I think that we've seen a beginning, once again, a kind of the budding of hope with the latest round of student protests, because so much that we thought had been completely silenced because everyone was afraid is now once again out in the open. So we don't know how far it will go, but certainly I think again academics are feeling cautiously optimistic. But I can go, I can't talk about the different ways in which they're organizing right now, but there isn't enough time, but I'll be happy to do so later.
I know that might be a lot of questions, but because of the time, I'd like to suggest that we move to the next session. And on behalf of the organizing committee, I'd like to express our gratitude to Professor Baviskar for your insightful reflections, and hopefully that your keynote and the discussion will be also influencing the discussion throughout the symposium. So thank you very much. And yeah, please join me to thank Professor Bafiskar as a first keynote speaker. So we will now proceed to the next session, but before that, we could have like a coffee break, only for 15 minutes, or 20 minutes, or 20 minutes, okay. So we will be back in 20 minutes, so 11:10, we will be returning to the aula, and we will be having the second keynote speaker. Again, thank you very much, Professor Bafiskar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mia Siskawati, for expertly moderating the session, and our sincere appreciation to Professor Amita Bafiskar for sharing such insightful perspective with us this morning.
Yes, before leaving the seat, I hope that all of you may listen to our announcement. We would like to announce something regarding the schedules of this program. We deeply apologize for the inconvenience because there are some mistakes written in the schedule that has already printed on your paper. Therefore, we encourage all of you to access the final schedule in the online book program. You can access the link through the QR code provided on the same paper. And you can also access through our website, symposiumugi.ui.ac.id, to see the final schedule.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now pause for a short coffee break. Refreshments are available at the Selasar, the foyer located just outside the auditorium.
Yes, once again, enjoy the coffee break. We kindly ask everyone to return to the auditorium and seated by 11:05. We only have 15 minutes of the coffee break. Once again, you may enjoy the coffee break for 15 minutes for a short break. And once again, the bathroom is on the right side and the left side of this auditorium.
Enjoy your coffee break, and we will see you back here shortly. Thank you.
Enjoy.
Halo, tes. Tes. 1, 2. Halo, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. kalau misalnya ngomong nggak masuk. Halo tes tes tes, oke. Halo tes tes, satu 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 satu. Aku lagi ngomong, 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 aku lagi ngomong. Ya yang kayak gini sama ya. Halo, 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 halo. Satu, 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 3, 1, 1, 4, 1, 1, 1, 08, 08, 1, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 1, 1, 1, 5, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6. Satu, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6. 1, 6, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5. Hah? Suaraku belum? Halo, tes 1, 2, 3. Iya, masuk Kak, masuk Kak. Iya. Suaranya masuk Kak. Silakan kalau misalnya mau berkomunikasi dengan narasumber. Terima kasih. Saya izin untuk cek suara untuk live streaming. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Iya, terima kasih. Mohon maaf, saya coba cek suara lagi ya, maaf. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Tes 1, tes 1, 1, 2, 1. Tes 1, tes. Tes 1. Halo. Selamat siang. Kepada pihak
Bagaimana Mbak? Bagaimana Mbak? Udah ya? Oh, berarti horizontal ke vertikal. Oh, berarti horizontal ke vertikal. Oh, horizontal.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, we warmly invite all of the participants and guests to join us again back inside the auditorium because we are going to continue our keynote session and the rest of the opening ceremony activities. Once again, we would like to invite all the participants, guests, and speakers to be able to join us again back inside the auditorium. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the auditorium. We hope you had a refreshing break and the opportunity to continue the engaging conversation sparked by this morning's session. Thank you for returning promptly as we are now ready to continue with the symposium.
We will now continue with our second keynote session. Once again, guiding us through the discussion is Dr. Mia Siskawati, a faculty member of the graduate program in Gender Studies at Universitas Indonesia, whose work focuses on gender, environment, and development.
Once again, let's give a round of applause for Dr. Mia as the moderator.
Thank you very much and welcome again. We are entering now the second keynote speaker, in conversation with the second keynote speaker. So our second keynote speaker is Dr. Els Tineke Rekekatmo, and she's from Universitas Papua, Unipa, Indonesia. She is not available to come offline, so she will be with us with the Zoom. Hello, Kak Els. I call her Kak Els. So, Dr. Els Tineke Rekekatmo, PhD, is a distinguished scholar of decolonial feminism and a lecturer in the Department of Socioeconomic Agriculture at the University of Papua, Unipa, Indonesia. She earned her PhD in Women's and Gender Studies from Flinders University, Australia, and she earned master degrees in Gender Studies at Universitas Indonesia. Dr. Katmo's research focuses on indigenous knowledge, maternal health, HIV prevention, rural development, and the lived experiences of Papuan women and indigenous communities. Her work advocates for placing Papuan epistemologies at the center of knowledge production while promoting more equitable and culturally grounded approaches to health, development, and social justice. I'd like now to welcome Dr. Els Katmo. Please welcome. And Dr. Els Katmo, you have 45 minutes to deliver your keynote. And the organizer told me that your keynote title, Redefine Self as Part of Decolonized Mind and Self. The time is yours, Kak Els. Kak Els, apakah sudah bisa mendengar kami dari kampus Depok? Semoga sinyalnya tidak bermasalah ya. So while waiting for the connection, I'd like to inform you, although we are behind, a little bit behind the schedule, but we will be trying to end this conversation with the second keynote speaker at 12:30, so we will have 1 hour of lunch break, and at 1:30 the next session will be, the parallel sessions will be started. Halo Kak Els, apakah sudah bersama kami?
Halo Mbak, terima kasih. Kasih aktif semua. Kenapa susah begini?
Halo?
Halo,
Halo,
halo
suaranya?
Mbak Mia.
Iya Kak Els, lumayan
Iya,
terdengar.
saya bisa dengar suaranya Mbak Mia.
Saya agak kurang mendengar dengan baik ya. Suaranya kurang jelas Kak Els bagi kami di sini. Bisa dicoba sekali lagi Kak?
Halo,
Ya,
halo
oke.
Mbak Mia, kedengaran?
Ya, sudah terdengar. Silahkan kalau Kak Els mau memulai presentasinya. So, yes, the time is yours Kak Els.
Baik, terima kasih Bu. Baik. Selamat siang Ibu Bapak. Maaf saya tidak bisa hadir secara offline, jadi saya ikuti dari Jayapura secara online. Rike, kalau dengar nama saya ini sangat Dutch. Pemberian orang tua saya, tapi ya karena bapak saya adalah produk kolonial, sehingga saya dinamai dengan nama yang sangat dipengaruhi oleh Dutch. Karena tidak ada dalam keluarga saya yang menggunakan nama ini, tapi nama ini diperoleh dari teman-teman sekolah dan keluarganya yang juga memiliki nama dari
Kak Els,
Dutch.
mohon maaf, karena suaranya agak kurang jelas, apakah Kak Els boleh lepas masker? Atau karena sedang sakit ya? Karena kurang jelas suaranya Kak.
Oke, sebentar. Tapi bisa kurang nyangkut. Bisa Mbak, kedengaran.
Sekarang lebih baik Kak. Silahkan.
Baik. Baik, terima kasih. Saya perkenalkan diri saya dulu, nama saya Els Tinegari Kikatmo. Saya waktu diberi nama ini oleh orang tua saya yang mungkin adalah produk dari kolonial. Karena setelah saya mempelajari kolonialisme, saya paham bahwa bapak saya adalah produk dari kolonial, sehingga memberikan nama yang begitu Dutch buat saya. Tapi ya sudahlah, saya terima saja. Dan itu mengantarkan saya untuk belajar atau mendalami sejarah keberadaan saya dan bagaimana hubungan masyarakat Papua dengan impact dari kolonialisme terhadap definisi diri kami orang Papua. Studi saya, terutama studi doktoral saya, sebenarnya master saya juga di perempuan Kamoro, tapi saya tidak melihat efek dari kolonialisme. Setelah doktor saya, baru saya mendalami, ternyata kolonialisme mempunyai efek yang cukup signifikan terhadap pendefinisian diri dari masyarakat adat Papua dan mendefinisikan bagaimana perempuan seharusnya bertindak, berperilaku, dan berpikir, dan juga bagaimana laki-laki seharusnya bertindak dan berpikir. Saya tidak terlalu bisa memastikan, tapi hampir pasti sangat dipengaruhi oleh nilai Christianity yang dibawa oleh pemerintahan kolonial Belanda waktu itu. Misalnya bagaimana perempuan didefinisikan dan alam didefinisikan, bagaimana yang utama adalah peran-peran setiap identitas ini, dan bagaimana hubungan antara identitas-identitas ini. Bahwa laki-laki berkuasa atas perempuan dan alam, sehingga keduanya harus tunduk pada otoritas laki-laki. Dan laki-laki itu dipandang sebagai manusia yang berhak mendefinisikan apa peran dari entitas-entitas lain di sekitarnya. Jadi itu kelihatan bagaimana perempuan berinteraksi dan juga laki-laki bagaimana berinteraksi dengan alam, dan bagaimana mendefinisikan atau memaknai hubungan itu dalam pola perilaku sehari-hari. Bahwa alam dan perempuan itu adalah sebagai yang tidak berkesadaran, itu betul. Saya belajar teori ini, tapi saya temukan dalam praktek kenyataan bahwa memang alam dan perempuan itu didefinisikan sebagai tidak berkesadaran, dan posisinya berada di bawah laki-laki sebagai yang berkesadaran yang mempunyai hak prioritas, hak untuk mengatur atau mengontrol keduanya. Kita lihat dampaknya adalah bahwa alam dimanifestasi atau dimanipulasi kemampuannya untuk mendukung keperluan atau kebutuhan laki-laki, dan untuk memperkuat posisi laki-laki di dalam masyarakat sebagai entitas yang mengontrol alam itu. Dalam masyarakat adat Kamoro, berdasarkan pengalaman yang saya temui, bahwa perempuan dan alam itu adalah satu. Tetapi laki-laki membuat definisi baru yang menarik perempuan keluar dari alam, dan keduanya harus dikontrol untuk memberikan manfaat atau benefit bagi laki-laki untuk keberadaan diri laki-laki. Dampaknya saat ini kita lihat bahwa stres, alam kemudian stres dan tidak lagi menjalankan fungsinya sebagai penyedia kehidupan.
Kelihatannya koneksinya.
Begitu juga. Kalau Mbak Mimi bisa kedengaran nggak suara saya?
KS, kayaknya koneksinya kurang baik. Apa boleh saya mengusulkan? Untuk KL off off saja kameranya supaya bisa terdengar lebih baik. Kayaknya putus-putus, Kak.
Oke, baik.
Ya, kelihatannya lebih baik sedikit, Kak.
Pengetahuan itu sangat ditentukan oleh siapa yang memegang otoritas ketika itu. Termasuk mendefinisikan alam itu apa dan perempuan itu apa. Keberadaan mereka didefinisikan oleh siapa yang memegang otoritas. Walaupun dalam kenyataannya perempuan mempunyai peran untuk memproduksi pengetahuan, tetapi hanya pada level untuk menjaga keberlanjutan komunitas dan keberlanjutan alam. Misalnya perempuan sangat paham bagaimana menjaga keberlanjutan alam untuk menjamin keberlanjutan komunitas atau keluarga itu. Kalau laki-laki lebih banyak ditarik ke pasar untuk memenuhi kebutuhan ekonomi real, apalagi setelah diperkenalkan dengan adanya ekonomi kapitalis dari luar yang masuk. Jadi baik alam maupun perempuan sama-sama digenjot untuk memenuhi kebutuhan ekonomis. Hal ini terlihat dari bagaimana spiritualitas ekologis Kamoro. Saya menemukan bahwa di dalam spiritualitas ekologis Kamoro itu, alam dimaknai sebagai pemberi kehidupan sehingga harus dijaga keberadaannya. Di mana perempuan Kamoro mempunyai hubungan yang sangat intim dengan alam dan cukup memahami ritme perputaran atau ritme alam itu. Sehingga di dalam memanfaatkan alam, perempuan lebih memahami dan mengerti kemampuan bereproduksi atau kemampuan reproduksi dari alam. Sehingga tidak menggenjot atau memaksakan alam untuk berproduksi di luar dari kemampuan dia untuk memperbaharui dirinya. Sehingga proses produksi itu berjalan secara natural. Walaupun dalam kenyataannya bagi laki-laki itu termasuk atau dilihat sebagai sesuatu yang lambat, yang lamban. Dan itu mempengaruhi atau berdampak juga dalam relasi atau cara laki-laki memaksa perempuan untuk bereproduksi atau menjamin keberlanjutan kehidupan laki-laki secara sosial, baik secara sosial maupun secara reproduktif. Ini terlihat dalam kehidupan sekarang itu bahwa alam punya kemampuan untuk mereproduksi atau menjaga keberlanjutan dirinya sudah tidak mampu lagi karena terus digenjot untuk berproduksi memenuhi kebutuhan hidup manusia, dalam hal ini laki-laki yang telah ditarik pada kebutuhan ekonomi kapitalis. Tidak produksi. Halo Mbak Mia.
Iya, Kak Els.
Iya. Dari saya secara garis besar begitu aja Mbak Mia.
Oke, baik.
Nanti berkembang dalam diskusi ya.
Terima kasih, Kak Els. Sekarang saya mau mengundang dari Ibu Bapak, kakak-kakak sekalian dari audiens untuk memberikan tanggapan atau juga pertanyaan untuk Dr. Els Katmo. Silahkan, tadi Dr. Els Katmo sudah berbagi tentang bagaimana perempuan Papua dan relasinya dengan alam dan bagaimana juga kemudian ekonomi kapitalis memberikan kontribusi pada penghancuran alam yang kemudian memberikan pengaruh pada relasi antara perempuan Papua dan alam. Baik, silahkan bagi yang ingin mengajukan tanggapan atau juga pertanyaan atau beberapa hal yang ingin didiskusikan. Silahkan angkat tangan dan Ibu Prof. Yunita, oke. Yang lainnya. Belum ada? Oh, dari belakang, maaf. Saya nggak bisa lihat kakak-kakak yang di belakang ya. Lalu apakah masih ada? Mungkin satu lagi. Sektor kanan, tengah, belum ada. Baik, kalau begitu Prof. Yunita dulu, kemudian maaf saya nggak lihat ya kakak yang di belakang. Silakan.
Terima kasih Prof. Elske. Is it in English or in Indonesian, Bu Mia? Can be both.
Mungkin
Bahasa Indonesia.
Prof. Junita bisa bahasa Indonesia.
Yeah.
Nanti saya coba
yeah.
bantu terjemahkan untuk teman-teman peserta yang tidak bisa bahasa Indonesia.
Yeah. Terima kasih Prof. Elske untuk introduction-nya yang singkat tapi fokus ya pada ini, pada bagaimana power relation dan produksi pengetahuan. Yang ingin saya tanyakan, tadi dikatakan oleh Prof. Elske bahwa mereka yang memegang, mendominasi produksi pengetahuan itu adalah yang memegang posisi powerful, yaitu laki-laki. Tetapi di lain pihak yang mempunyai keintiman dengan alam adalah perempuan. Nah, pengetahuan perempuan atau pengetahuan laki-laki yang sekarang ini dalam kondisi perubahan iklim, satu perubahan iklim yang semakin tidak menentu, kedua juga perubahan tutupan hutan dan lahan dan ekosistem oleh yang namanya proyek strategi nasional atau estate dan sebagainya. Nah, sejauh mana keintiman perempuan dengan alam itu membantu mereka untuk menghadapi semua tantangan, atau laki-laki yang kemudian memutuskan atau membuat solusi? Lalu bagaimana kondisinya dalam kondisi uncertainties ya, yang semakin mungkin memarginalkan mereka dan juga mengubah secara signifikan relung hidup perempuan-perempuan Papua. Terima kasih. Can you explain?
Baik. Kak Els, izin saya menerjemahkan ke bahasa Inggris sedikit untuk kawan-kawan peserta yang tidak bisa berbahasa Indonesia. So Prof. Junita just delivered the comments on the knowledge product. Dr. Els share about the knowledge production that related to the nature that mostly handled by those who have power, which is the male members of the community. Meanwhile, the women have an intimate relationship with the nature. So Prof. Junita asked, in the situation where the climate change, in line with the change of the forest coverage as well as other environmental destructions faced by the people in Papua, how the Papuan women then face those changes, and in terms of the knowledge production, how then the male members of the community who mostly have more power contribute to the relationship between women and nature, and as well as the people in Papua. So maybe that's the first question. Pertanyaan pertama, Kak Els, bolehkah saya mengundang dulu pertanyaan yang kedua, atau karena ada waktu kita satu persatu kali ya, satu persatu. Silahkan Kak Els ditanggapi pertanyaan dari Prof. Junita. Silahkan Kak Els.
Baik, makasih Mbak. Dalam kenyataannya saat ini memang laki-laki lebih dominan dan menggeser perempuan dari mengambil keputusan. Karena memang kita diperkenalkan dengan budaya patriarki. Secara tradisional di dalam adat perempuan punya porsi untuk mengambil keputusan. Tetapi setelah dalam perkembangannya, masyarakat adat itu diperkenalkan dengan budaya mainstream yang sangat patriarki, sehingga mendorong laki-laki mempunyai peran penting, atau bukan peran penting ya, mempunyai privilege untuk mengambil alih itu peran perempuan, walaupun secara budaya atau dalam adat itu perempuan punya porsi yang cukup penting juga untuk mengambil keputusan. Tetapi kalau berkaitan dengan ekonomi, menurut pengamatan saya ini cenderung didominasi oleh laki-laki. Saya tidak tahu, padahal yang lebih banyak berkaitan dengan ekonomi, pengeluaran, ekspenditur keluarga sebenarnya perempuan ya, membesarkan anak, memperhatikan kebutuhan anak, tetapi dalam kenyataannya terjadi pergeseran bahwa itu lebih sekarang didominasi oleh laki-laki. Dan itu yang terjadi saat ini, sehingga keinginan untuk mengeksploitasi alam secara berlebihan itu cenderung ada pada laki-laki. Kalau perempuan cukup paham dengan ritme perputaran alam sehingga pemanfaatan itu selalu memperhatikan kemampuan alam untuk bereproduksi, memproduksi dirinya kembali, kemampuan alam untuk memperbaharui dirinya. Tapi kecenderungan yang ada pada laki-laki memperhatikan aspek itu. Mungkin karena perempuan sama dengan alam fungsinya adalah mereproduksi kehidupan, sehingga perempuan cukup memahami kemampuan alam dan itu termanifestasi dalam tindakan untuk memanfaatkan alam untuk memenuhi kebutuhan kehidupan hari-hari. Jadi tetap menjaga keseimbangan dan keselarasan antara pemenuhan kebutuhan manusia dengan kemampuan alam untuk mereproduksi dirinya. Begitu Prof kira-kira.
Oke. Bagaimana kemudian konteks perubahan iklim, Kak? Ini Prof Yunita menyampaikan tambahan. Artinya bagaimana kemudian perubahan iklim dan juga kerusakan lingkungan memberikan kontribusi pada ketimpangan peran tersebut.
Ya, dalam kenyataannya berdasarkan penelitian saya terakhir di Bintuni itu kebingungan sebenarnya untuk merecover alam dan bagaimana membantu alam untuk tetap menyediakan kebutuhan manusia. Perempuan kebingungan, laki-laki apalagi lebih tidak bisa mengcover situasi itu. Sehingga terdampaknya adalah semua menjadi korban dari krisis alam ini. Jadi perubahannya sangat lambat sebenarnya. Kemampuan alam sendiri untuk memperbaharui dirinya tidak bisa dibantu oleh baik laki-laki maupun perempuan karena memang tanggung jawab itu harusnya ada sharing, dibagikan bersama. Jadi jangan lagi diberikan kepada perempuan saja untuk karena ritmenya memahami ritme alam, jadi perempuan yang memikul tanggung jawab itu sebenarnya tanggung jawab itu harusnya ada pada dua-dua, baik laki-laki maupun perempuan. Begitu Prof kurang lebih.
Baik. Terima kasih Kak Els. Untuk penanya yang kedua, kakak yang di belakang, silahkan. Oh Mbak Cynthia ya?
Iya, terima kasih Mbak Mia. Terima kasih untuk presentasinya Prof Els. Saya Cynthia, mahasiswa doktoral dari University of British Columbia. Seperti kita ketahui kalau di Papua itu ada yang dibilang satu tungku tiga batu yang menggambarkan pilar sosial di mana adat, agama dan pemerintah menjadi unsur penting bagi kehidupan masyarakat di Papua. Dalam hal ini menurut Profesor Els, bagian mana dari tiga pilar itu yang bisa menjadi leverage point supaya ada pembaharuan pendekatan dalam hal memberi space untuk perempuan agar suara dan juga concernnya bisa lebih didengar. Terima kasih.
Ya, silakan Kak Els bisa direspon pertanyaan dari Mbak Cynthia.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak. Menurut saya pikir semuanya punya peran penting ya, tapi dalam kenyataannya perubahan pola pikir itu sangat ditentukan oleh pendidikan yang dialami oleh seorang atau masyarakat ya. Misalnya saat ini saya lihat sudah mulai terjadi pergeseran bahwa peran-peran penting yang dulunya sangat didominasi oleh perempuan tidak bisa dibagikan dengan laki-laki karena pengaruh dari pendidikan. Jadi pendidikan gender dan perspektif itu penting menurut saya. Dan terutama sekarang pada rumah tangga atau pada kelompok orang muda itu sudah lebih baik lah dibanding dengan yang generasi sebelumnya. Jadi menurut saya pendidikan itu penting untuk mengembangkan kesadaran gender atau perspektif ekologis yang ramah terhadap perempuan dan juga alam. Begitu kurang lebih Mbak Mia.
Oke, baik. Terima kasih Kak Els. Apakah masih ada dari audiens yang akan memberikan tanggapan, komentar, atau juga pertanyaan untuk Dr. Els Katmu? Silahkan, Kak. Apakah ada satu lagi? Silahkan Mbak Soraya. Baik, ini kakak yang di tengah dulu.
Ya, terima kasih Mbak Mia dan Kak Els. Saya Diah dari Antropologi Universitas Indonesia dan saya menemukan satu tulisan Kak Els dalam sebuah website di Harvard University. Judulnya Developing Maternity Care to Reverse Patterns of Violence and Inequality in West Papua. Dan yang ingin saya tanyakan adalah sebagai peneliti yang cukup banyak mengkaji tentang isu dan kesehatan maternal, bagaimana Kak Els melihat kontribusi antropologi khususnya dalam mengembangkan layanan maternitas yang tidak hanya aman dalam perspektif klinis, melainkan juga adil atau mungkin inklusif secara sosial, khususnya menghormati pengalaman subjektif atau dalam konteks pengalaman perempuan adat di Papua. Terima kasih.
Oke, terima kasih Mbak Dia. Silahkan Kak Els direspon pertanyaan dari Mbak Dia.
Sorry Mbak Mia, tadi putus-putus ya, saya nggak terlalu jelas dengarnya. Boleh diulang Kak Mbak Mia?
Oke.
Bukan Mbak Mia aja
Dia
yang
tadi menyampaikan bahwa Mbak Dia sempat membaca tulisan Kak Els yang terkait dengan kesehatan ibu atau maternity health, dan kemudian Mbak Dia menanyakan bagaimana pandangan Kak Els tentang bagaimana antropologi sebagai sebuah bidang ilmu pengetahuan bisa memberikan kontribusi bagi kajian tentang kesehatan ibu atau maternity health.
Ya, kita tahu bersama antropologi kan bicara soal menggambarkan penggambaran tentang manusia ya. Jadi bagi saya, bagaimana antropologi memposisikan diri dalam kesehatan maternal itu penting untuk menggambarkan sebaiknya sharing peran untuk memperhatikan kesehatan reproduksi ibu, termasuk nilai-nilai penting soal, terutama ini saya bicara dalam konteks Papua ya, dalam memproduksi anak laki-laki atau anak perempuan, dan kemampuan untuk berproduksi itu seolah diatur oleh laki-laki dalam budaya yang tidak memihak pada perempuan, budaya mainstream. Jadi itu yang perlu kemampuan antropologis untuk menemukan itu dan mendefinisikan kembali sebenarnya peran reproduksi dan kemampuan reproduksi perempuan itu harus ditempatkan secara bermartabat, bukan hanya sebagai mesin untuk memproduksi manusia, dan juga ditentukan jenis kelamin yang harus kamu produksi apa begitu untuk memenuhi privilege dari laki-laki di dalam struktur sosial yang sangat mendukung kepentingan laki-laki. Kurang lebih begitu Mbak Mia.
Baik, terima kasih Kak El. Saya pikir ini pertanyaan yang sangat penting dan jadi tantangan juga untuk bidang ilmu antropologi ya, untuk kemudian lebih mendalami isu kesehatan maternal terutama di masyarakat adat dan wilayah-wilayah terpencil lainnya. Kak El, ada pertanyaan terakhir dari Ibu Soraya Afif. Silakan Mbak Soraya.
Terima kasih Prof. Els. Saya ingin melanjutkan tadi pertanyaan sebelumnya. Apa lagi yang diperlukan selain pendidikan untuk memberikan memperkuat perempuan di dalam menentukan masa depan di Papua ya? Saya tahu dan perempuan di sana itu bisa masuk ke banyak hal. Tetapi pertanyaannya dengan penguatan adat, apakah itu punya impact ya kepada perempuan dengan banyaknya kerusakan hutan dan wilayah di Papua, apakah juga berimpact? Nah, pertanyaannya selain pendidikan, apalagi yang diperlukan untuk memperkuat gerakan perempuan untuk bisa menentukan masa depan Papua? Terima kasih.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Soraya. Kak Els, silahkan. Mudah-mudahan tadi
Baik.
bisa terdengar jelas.
Harapannya dengan pendidikan bisa memberikan kemampuan atau penghormatan kepada perempuan yang seharusnya diberikan oleh laki-laki. Saya pikir pendidikan dalam keluarga juga penting untuk yang keluarga yang terutama mendorong atau mengutamakan laki-laki, juga pendidikan itu penting. Jadi ibunya juga harus diberi kesadaran gender yang kritis, yang baik, supaya karena ibu ini membantu mendidik dan membesarkan anak laki-laki dan perempuan dalam keluarga. Pokoknya bukan ibu ya, orang tua ya. Jadi selain pendidikan formal, saya pikir pendidikan dalam keluarga itu juga penting. Jadi penyedaran gender itu jangan lagi buat anak sekolah atau buat mahasiswa, tapi baik laki-laki dan perempuan yang sehari-hari berurusan dengan mendidik dan membesarkan anak itu juga perlu diberikan penyadaran atau kesadaran kritis tentang bagaimana relasi gender itu dibangun yang baik sehingga memberikan manfaat bagi baik laki-laki maupun perempuan. Jadi Mbak, selain pendidikan, saya pikir pendidikan formal ya, saya pikir pendidikan keluarga itu penting dan juga masyarakat kita juga bertanggung jawab untuk itu. Jadi kesadaran itu bukan hanya di keluarga. Semua masyarakat kita mempunyai peran penting untuk membentuk penghargaan dan penghormatan terhadap perempuan dan mengajak laki-laki untuk memberikan itu bagi perempuan. Bukan untuk memberikan privilege pada perempuan lagi, tapi menjaga relasi yang seimbang di antara keduanya sehingga tidak membebankan satu seks. Itu aja Mbak, makasih.
Bukan cuma pendidikan formal ya Kak Els, tapi juga pendidikan kritis untuk membangun kesadaran kritis termasuk tentang relasi gender, juga kesadaran kritis tentang kesetaraan gender di keluarga hingga masyarakat. Baik, apakah masih ada, karena masih ada sedikit waktu, apakah masih ada yang mau memberikan tanggapan, pertanyaan untuk Dr. Els Katmo? Baik, kalau tidak ada, percakapan ini sangat penting, walaupun Kak Els tidak bisa hadir bersama kita, tapi bahwa kajian-kajian antropologi untuk masyarakat seperti yang ada di Papua maupun masyarakat adat tempat lainnya menjadi PR bagi bidang ilmu antropologi dan bidang ilmu sosial lainnya. Dan saya tahu ada beberapa sesi dalam simposium ini yang juga akan membahas bagaimana kemudian produksi pengetahuan, termasuk juga bagaimana kerja-kerja riset dan kerja-kerja penguatan masyarakat juga akan memberikan kontribusi penting. Jadi Kak Els, dari 4 pertanyaan tadi, apakah ada yang Kak Els ingin tambahkan untuk kemudian bisa kita pelajari bersama dalam simposium ini sebagai closing notes dari Kak Els?
Bahwa saya ingin tambahkan bahwa pembentukan sebuah budaya yang baru yang lebih sensitif atau lebih ramah terhadap perempuan harus dimulai dari sekarang, bukan hanya pada perempuan sebagai pendidik utama keluarga, tapi bagi semua kita yang terlibat. Tetangga, komunitas punya peran penting untuk membentuk sebuah relasi yang cukup baik bagi terutama mendidik generasi kita untuk menjadi generasi yang sensitivitas gendernya sangat baik. Terima kasih Mbak Mia, itu aja.
Kak Els, terima kasih banyak atas kesempatan untuk bisa bercakap-cakap. Semoga kita semua bisa berkesempatan untuk bertemu Kak Els dan juga memberikan kontribusi bagi proses-proses riset dan proses-proses penguatan masyarakat lain di Papua dan di tempat masyarakat adat lainnya. Kita berikan aplaus semuanya untuk Dr. Els Katmo. So we just had a productive conversation with Dr. Els Katmo, who shared about the intimate relationship of women of Papua with the nature, and then also how the capitalist economy contribute to the problems faced by the people in Papua there, especially in terms of the environmental destruction. And then Dr. Els also shared about the imbalance of the knowledge production, where actually the women, the Papuan women have also very significant knowledge about the nature and about the other related aspects, but those in power, mostly the male members of the community, then controlling the knowledge and controlling the decision making. We also had conversation about the issue of the education, the maternal health, and also Dr. Els emphasized on the needs, not only formal education, but also informal as well as critical education in order to increase the critical awareness on the perspective of the gender equality, and also about the importance of working together to make a good transformation for people in Papua. Thank you, Dr. Els Katmo, and please join me to make a big applause for Dr. Els Katmo. So I'd like to deliver now the time arrangement to the organizing committee. Again, thank you very much for participating in this session.
Once again, thank you so much to Dr. Mia Siskawati as our moderator. Please give a round of applause one more time for Dr. Mia. She has been guiding us throughout the 2 keynote session and with such amazing discussion flow. Also, terima kasih Dr. Elstineke Rike Katmo that already provide us with such insightful discussion about the land of Papua, the dynamics that happen there, about health, education, and of course the capitalist economy, and of course its people, especially women.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we formally bring this morning's opening ceremony to a close. We would also like to extend our sincere thanks to our sponsors, Danone and Asuransi Jasindo, for their generous support of ISJAI 9.
Yes, we will now have a break for lunch. For information, there are many food stalls and a canteen accessible around our campus. You may find the details in your guidebook. Kindly arrange your own lunch during this time. We would like to also inform you all that at 1 p.m. there will be a book discussion held in the auditorium Juwono Sudarsono or AJS. We will be discussing the book titled Negeri Bujang Tandomang, written by Professor Amri Marzali.
This evening, after the book discussion and panels, we warmly invite everyone to join us for the gala dinner, where we hope you will enjoy not only a delightful meal, but also the opportunity to network, exchange ideas, and strengthen the connection built throughout the day.
For information, the dinner will be served before 6:30 p.m. on the first floor of the auditorium building. So on the first floor of this building at Balai Purnomo Prawiro. We look forward to welcoming you there.
While leaving the auditorium, we encourage all of us to pay attention to cleanliness of our auditorium. Please don't leave any trash. As we have mentioned earlier, don't forget to always wear your name tag as identity and to access all of our facility.
To be able to access the room for panel session, the committee have also provided several signage throughout the campus. Please follow the guides. With that, we, Rekian and Jere, will take our leave for now.
We look forward to welcoming you again this evening. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, everyone. You may leave the auditorium for lunch break. Thank you so much. Of course, shout out to our Tanjidor Cahaya Mutiara for accompanying our ceremony this morning. Please give a round of applause for our Tanjidor.
kamera ini mati.